give you confidence that in the middle of the night, if China's about to attack us, there's a war breaking out in Iran, that he is the sharpest person to be able to handle that?
Which administration texted war plans to their brother?
The Trump. But it's
Was
just
that
like
Joe Biden?
No, but do we just keep lowering the bar because Trump is bad?
Trump lied to people. I think that's why we.
Well, he won more votes. That is a fact.
I think he lied to his base. I think he told his base that they were going to, their overtime would not be taxed. That was a lie.
Actually, that's in the new tax bill. It's literally in the tax bill.
They had to fight to put that in. They had to fight to put that back in. He had every intention of taking away that.
That's not true. He ran on no tax on tips, and it's in the tax bill.
It all exploded on live TV, and not in a subtle way. Imagine this. You're sitting down for your usual morning dose of The View, and suddenly the conversation spins out of control. No warning, no filter. Just raw political tension.
I do think one thing that really irks me on the left, and I don't really have a lot of faith in the right, so I'm not, you tend to criticize the people that you line up more, that you care more about, and that would be the Democrats for me. People lost trust in them because the voters were saying there was a concern. There were people across the board saying they had a concern. And the Democrats said, no, 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 over here, look over here. They told the voters what to care about, and they did not listen when the voters said they cared. So these stories come out aren't about beating a dead horse. It's saying if they could have a fair conversation that we heard you, we saw it as they saw it, they'd be gaining some of the voters back to say, okay, we're not going to keep saying that.
You agree with that?
Alyssa Farah Griffin, former White House staffer turned co-host, looks right at her fellow panelists and says what many Americans have been thinking for years, but rarely hear on a mainstream talk show.
No, I don't. I think that I want to move on from why the Democratic Party lost, and I want to hear from the Democratic Party about how we are going to take our country back and how what they are going to do to combat fascism and what they're going to do to stop the Medicaid cuts that are going on, to stop giving tax cuts to billionaires, to stop taking federal workers' pensions away, to stop taking federal jobs away, to stop taking education away, to stop attacking our institutions, to stopping, you know, why is this Trump administration stopping medical research, cancer? I want to talk about why this administration is giving refugee status to South African white Afrikaners as opposed to Afghans and Ukrainians and people of color. That's what I want to talk about.
According to her, the Democratic Party didn't just make mistakes, they flat out ignored the people they claim to represent. She went after the leadership with zero hesitation, accusing them of gaslighting the public about President Biden's mental sharpness.
77% of Americans in 2023 said Joe Biden was too old to run again. And they were told, sit down, shut up, he is the nominee. And then when it became untenable and he stepped aside, they anointed Kamala Harris. There was not a primary, there was not a democratic process. And then when she lost, they said, don't look backward, we're moving forward, we're not even going to talk about why we didn't listen to you. We had Joe Biden here last week. It was an honor to have him. I think he is a good man. I do not think he could have been president for 4 more years. The hardest job on the planet.
Can this guy be president?
He was elected. I didn't vote for it.
Real quickly, but he also, President Biden took responsibility at this table, which is something that I'm frustrated with the Democrats. He said,
he did take
this falls on me. And I said that was the clearest answer of what people needed to hear.
While voters across the board raised real concerns about age, ability, leadership, the Democrats, according to Alyssa, shoved their own storyline down everyone's throats. Biden is fine, they kept repeating, even as clips and interviews suggested otherwise. Alyssa wasn't just criticizing, they were calling it what it really was: political arrogance dressed up as confidence. She claimed the party failed to listen, failed to respond, and now they're paying the price. And the tension on set? You could feel it through the screen. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue.
Quoted in this book of saying they would be boxed out of meetings if they raise concerns, and there's very specific examples. George Clooney goes on the record to Jake Tapper and says he moved mountains. He flew in from Italy to do this record fundraiser for Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't recognize George Clooney. one of the most
different
recognizable,
lately.
one of the most recognizable men on the
does.
planet. And now that's not a presidential duty. It's not the job. You don't have to recognize George Clooney. Does that give you confidence that in the middle of the night, if China's about to attack us, there's a war breaking out in Iran, that he is the sharpest person to be able to handle that?
Which administration texted war plans to their brother?
The Trump. But it's
Was
just
that
like
Joe Biden?
No, but do we just keep lowering the bar because Trump is back?
Then came Sunny Hostin ready to fire back, not with reflection or even a hint of accountability, but with a rapid-fire list of everything wrong with the other side. She didn't want to talk about why Democrats lost voters. She wanted to jump straight into battle mode. According to her, the focus shouldn't be on cleaning up Democratic mistakes, it should be on stopping fascism, protecting federal workers, saving Medicaid, fighting tax cuts for billionaires.
The ship has sailed. It's out in the ocean somewhere with Biden.
We have Trump
it's over. Get over it.
No, we have Trump because you guys screwed this up. With all due respect.
And halting attacks on institutions. It was a classic deflection. Instead of addressing the mounting evidence that Biden's leadership was cracking under pressure, Sunny doubled down on the idea that the real danger was still Trump and his policies. She brought up medical research cuts, federal job losses, refugee decisions, almost like reading from a laundry list of every talking point the left could find.
I actually think we have Trump
really?
because Trump lied to people. I think that's why we have
He won more votes. That is a fact.
I think he lied to his base. I think he told his base that they were going to, their overtime would not be taxed. That was a lie.
Actually, that's in the new tax bill. It's literally in the tax bill.
They had to fight to put that in. They had to fight to put that back in. He had every intention of taking away that.
That's not true. He ran on no tax on tips, and it's in the tax bill.
Yeah, but it wasn't in it originally. I also think
drafted
that a lot of
now.
people are, and Swazi pointed it out that it wasn't in there. I think the other thing that people need to realize is that they were lied to. Federal workers that voted for him, farmers that voted for him, immigrants that voted for him, they were lied to. That is why we have Trump.
It wasn't just political, it was emotional. But emotional doesn't always mean effective. While Alyssa was talking about broken trust and ignored voters, Sunny seemed more interested in re-energizing the party's base for war. Not internal reform, not reflection, just more resistance. It was like she had no interest in what went wrong, only in pretending everything was still salvageable if they just shouted louder. And that's when the tension started to crack wide open. Alyssa wasn't about to let that slide. Alyssa wasn't just sitting there to smile and nod, she came in ready to drop bombs, and the next one landed hard. She called out what she described as one of the biggest betrayals of the democratic process. The way Kamala Harris was handed the presidential baton without a real primary. No debates, no choice. Just a quiet, backroom decision. 77% of Americans, Alyssa pointed out, believed Joe Biden was too old to run again. But instead of listening, Democratic leadership told everyone to sit down and accept it. And when Biden finally stepped aside, what did they do? They skipped the entire process and anointed Harris without giving the public a voice. No vote, no discussion, just silence. Then Alyssa dropped the kind of truth bomb that made Sunny Hostin visibly squirm in her seat. You always talk about democracy and the will of the people, so what happened to that? And there it was, the hypocrisy laid bare in front of a national audience. It wasn't just about Kamala Harris. It was about trust, about power being hoarded behind closed doors while voters were told to play along. And the reaction from Sunny? A weak, "What's wrong with that?" You could hear the disbelief in Alyssa's voice. This was supposed to be the party of the people, but they skipped the people altogether. But Alyssa wasn't done. She turned the spotlight directly onto President Biden himself, and this time, it got personal. She brought up a moment that, on the surface, might seem small, but to her, it spoke volumes. During a major Hollywood fundraiser, George Clooney, that George Clooney flew in from Italy to show his support. And when he met Biden, the president didn't recognize him. Now, Alyssa made it clear, no. Recognizing celebrities isn't a presidential job requirement. But if Biden can't identify one of the most recognizable faces on the planet, what does that say about his ability to lead in a crisis? If China were to launch a surprise attack in the middle of the night, or if tensions escalated in the Middle East, is this the man the country can rely on to act swiftly, clearly, and decisively? It wasn't a rhetorical question. Alyssa's tone made it obvious she doesn't think so, and that's where the entire panel started to shift uncomfortably. Her criticism wasn't vague. It was sharp, detailed, and impossible to ignore. She framed the issue as a dangerous game of denial. While the world gets more unstable, the Democratic Party, according to her, keeps lowering the bar, all in the name of pretending things are fine. That's not leadership, she said. That's self-deception, and it's costing them everything. And just when things couldn't get more tense, Joy Behar jumped in clearly rattled. Instead of addressing Alyssa's points, she did what so many on the left have done when backed into a corner. She brought up Trump. The crowd could feel it. Alyssa had laid out a strong, case-specific, focused brutal-land. Joy tried to spin the whole thing into a Trump conversation. But Alyssa wasn't having it. She called it exactly what it was: a deflection. A weak distraction from the very real issue of Biden's mental fitness and the chaos it was causing on the world stage. She reminded everyone watching that under Biden's leadership, global tensions didn't just rise, they exploded. Russia invaded Ukraine, Iran-backed attacks surged. China grew more aggressive, buzzing US aircraft and threatening Taiwan. And what did America do in response? According to Alyssa, nothing that scared them. The deterrent power the US once had it vanished. Rogue nations were acting without fear. Meanwhile, the left kept saying everything was fine, that it was better than under Trump. But Alyssa wasn't buying it. And neither were the millions watching at home. The problem wasn't just Biden. It was the refusal to admit there was even a problem to begin with. That moment, it was more than just TV drama. It was a full-blown reality check-on that left the panel shaken and scrambling. Then came the final blow. Alyssa looked straight into the heart of the issue and said what the left didn't want to hear. "We have Trump again because you screwed this up." The panel froze. That sentence cut through every excuse and talking point that had been thrown around, and Alyssa wasn't wrong to say it. The ship hadn't just sailed, it had been set on fire by the very people claiming they were saving it. And then the conversation took a sharp turn into the Signalgate scandal. Alyssa didn't sugarcoat it. She admitted it was bad. Really bad. A Republican congressman had made a serious misstep, and she said plainly it deserved condemnation. But here's the key difference, she pointed out. Republicans were actually calling it out. They weren't pretending it didn't happen. They weren't spinning it into a fake narrative. Joy Behar, however, tried to twist this one minor lapse into a Trump-level catastrophe. Alyssa called that move dishonest and manipulative because comparing a single procedural error to years of mental decline, global instability, and executive dysfunction wasn't just unfair, it was absurd. Alyssa's message was simple: accountability matters on both sides. But pretending that one small scandal equals 4 years of international embarrassment? That's not accountability, that's desperation. And it showed. The panel kept reaching, but they had nothing left to grab onto. And then, just when you thought it couldn't get more intense, Alyssa and Sunny clashed head-on. Sunny tried to revive the old narrative, that Trump lied to his base, that he broke promises, that he betrayed working-class Americans. She brought up taxes on tips, claiming Trump said he'd protect them, but then tried to remove those protections. She insisted federal workers, farmers, even immigrants had all been lied to, and that's why, in her words, we have Trump. But Alyssa wasn't letting that slide. She fired back with specifics. The tax protections were, in fact, reinstated after being removed in early drafts. And even beyond that, she argued Trump didn't just make promises, kept them. From securing the border to cutting government waste to confronting global threats, she said Trump had done what he said he would. The real difference, Alyssa pointed out, wasn't about who told fewer lies it, was about which party was willing to admit when it was wrong. The Democrats? She claimed they doubled down, denied everything, and refused to look in the mirror. And the moment she started correcting Sunny live, on air, you could see it, Sunny wasn't interested in facts. She dismissed the pushback, acted smug, rolled her eyes, and waved it off like it didn't matter. But it did matter. Millions were watching, and the tension wasn't just between two women, it was between two versions of truth colliding in real time. Before the final scene unfolded, Alyssa dropped one more piece of dynamite yon that shook the entire conversation to its core. This time, it wasn't just about Biden or the Democrats' decisions. It was about something deeper, something that hinted at a complete transformation in values within the party itself. She pointed to how Biden had changed radically. This wasn't the moderate Democrat many voters remembered from years ago. Alyssa talked about how Biden, once cautious and centrist, had suddenly embraced a far more progressive agenda, especially on cultural issues. One of the biggest examples? His full-throttle support for Pride Month, including draping a massive pride flag across the White House. A gesture that, just a few years earlier, would have been unthinkable for someone like him. This, she argued, wasn't a normal political evolution. It was a pivot so sharp, it raised serious questions. Was this truly Biden leading? Or was he being pushed from behind by more radical elements in the party? She asked, not subtly, if the Joe Biden we see today is just a figurehead, a name used to sell a very different agenda. The LGBTQ issue was just the tip of the iceberg. Alyssa said it signaled something more unsettling, that policy wasn't being shaped by thoughtful leadership, but by pressure, trends, and the loudest voices in the room. And all the while, Democratic voters who supported Biden expecting moderation found themselves tied to policies and cultural battles they never signed up for. This shift wasn't just confusing, it was alienating. Voters felt left behind. And Alyssa's argument was clear. That growing disconnect between the party's leadership and its base is exactly why trust is crumbling. So, by the time the conversation came full circle, it wasn't just about who could run the country. It was about who's already been running ITAND, whether the American people had any say in it at all. Now let's wrap this up. Things got even more revealing when the discussion moved beyond the view set. After the heated exchange, Alyssa took her concerns straight to CNN. This is where it got even more personal. She talked about Biden's recent interview, where something unexpected happened. Jill Biden was sitting right beside him. That might not sound like a big deal, but Alyssa explained exactly why it mattered. When the president was asked about his cognitive health, instead of answering on his own, Jill jumped in to help. To Alyssa, that wasn't just awkward, it was alarming. That moment, she said, was supposed to be his chance to silence the critics, to prove that he could speak clearly, answer questions, and show strength. But instead, it reinforced the exact fears people already had, that Biden isn't capable of handling pressure without someone by his side, guiding him through. She didn't say it with anger, she said it with clarity. That interview wasn't reassuring, it was a red flag, a big one. And then came the bombshell from Jake Tapper's new book, which claimed insiders had been shielding Biden's decline for a long time. Conversations, meetings, even basic interactions, people were saying he wasn't the same. Alyssa tied it all together with one disturbing question. Who's really been running the country for the last 4 years? Because clearly it hasn't been the Biden people remember. The change wasn't slow. It was dramatic. And the Democratic Party, instead of facing it, wrapped it in flags and slogans and hoped no one would notice. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.